Money FM 89.3. Best of breakfast. The bigger picture, only on Money FM 89.3.
Good morning. Welcome to The Bigger Picture. Now, with travel back in full swing, APAC travelers have made the most of the first half of 2025. You could probably include me in that equation. 2 trips to Thailand and 1 to Japan this year. Booking.com has released some data which reflects some key APAC traveler search trends from January to August of this year. And to help us understand what those findings mean, we have on the line now Laura Houldsworth. She's the Managing Director for Asia Pacific at Booking.com. Good morning, Laura.
Good morning.
Nice to have you on to talk about this data that your team has put out. Now, first and foremost, just to set some context here for the listeners, what are some of the key findings or search trends that stand out for the data collected this year thus far, and how do they compare to previous year's data?
Yeah, thanks so much. There's been a few interesting findings. I'm not sure we're seeing major shifts from last year, but I think what we have seen is some major shifts coming out of COVID. I mean, now we're a few years past, but what we really saw at that time was a lot more local travel, so a lot more domestic travel, which has expanded into inter-regional, and we've seen that continue in the searches even this year. So heavy domestic searches for each country, and then beyond that, really staying within the region, which has been quite interesting to see. Only kind of London, Paris come in the top 10 for a couple of countries like China, Hong Kong, but for the most part, it's very heavily domestic, and this is something that we're seeing probably on the rise and will continue. But what's interesting is the types of locations within domestic searches that we're seeing. So something a bit more off the beaten track, not just the traditional cities, but people looking for something a little bit more unique. And we think that that will probably continue as well.
Yeah, we had about 8 out of 10 APAC markets, to your point, having a domestic location as their top searched. Is that preference being driven as well by rising airfares and cost of living pressures, or are factors like cultural familiarity and convenience playing a bigger role?
I think it's a bit of both. I think definitely, travellers have said that it's easier for them. I mean, almost 50% said it was easier to travel domestically. Safety still plays a considerable part. And realising that actually there's still plenty to offer in their own countries, and they are exploring more, like I say, broadly outside of the main locations. And shorter distances, we are also seeing a trend towards more frequent, shorter time. So this is also probably playing a bit more into the domestic space.
Japan continues to dominate APAC searches. No surprises there. I made a trip myself this year. Is this popularity sustainable, do you think, or could it risk oversaturation for travelers who are seeking some novelty?
Well, I think what's interesting for Japan, I mean, it's definitely on the radar for travelers globally. I mean, they're on track to hit 40 million visitors this year. But they're not looking to stop. Japan tourism are aiming 60 million by 2030. So I think they're wanting to make sure that travellers experience the full scope of what Japan has to offer. And there's so much. There's uniqueness, which we know people are looking for. There's the culture. People are looking for food, the mindfulness travel, natural scenery. So we know that Japan kind of has it all. But what's interesting to see is how that is getting spread out across the country and not the traditional only kind of Tokyo, Osaka destinations that we've seen in the past.
Yeah, I believe Japan was one of the top 3 destinations for APAC travelers. So what were the other 2 and what makes them popular choices?
Yeah, Tokyo, Osaka are there in the top 2, and Seoul tops in number 3. And that's across all of our APAC travelers. They're consistently in the top 10. So I think that's also very interesting.
Let's move more specifically to South Asia. We have Indian travelers being one of the few groups whose top pick was international in the form of Dubai. Why do you think this stands out compared to the more domestic preferences elsewhere?
Dubai have intentionally tried to attract the Indian traveller. Actually, domestic travel is on the rise in India for sure, because we've also seen a lot of flight capacity increases. But we have seen significant flight capacity increase to Dubai. Dubai government launched a Home for Home campaign for Indian travellers specifically. They launched easier visa access, 5-year multi-entry, visa on arrival. So that has just helped to drive that. There's a cultural familiarity, and it's a short flight. So 3 to 4 hours. So I think that we will continue to see kind of the rise of the Middle East generally for Indian travellers.
Yeah, Laura, there also appear to be some sharp jumps in searches for second-tier cities like Fukuoka in Japan and Jeju in South Korea. Is that a sign, you think, that travellers are gravitating towards these second-tier cities that may feel perhaps more authentic and less crowded?
Yes, most definitely. Then that's been on the rise now for the last couple of years, and we'll see it even more, I think, over the next few years. In our travel predictions report, we also saw that almost 70% are using new technology, so obviously generative AI, to find less crowded places. So I think as that continues and more people are using this technology, then we will continue to see new places surfacing in these top 10.
Yeah, and in terms of the demographic breakdown on this front, do you see Gen Z and millennials perhaps driving the rise of trendier spots versus older travelers sticking to Tokyo or Bangkok, for example?
Yeah, I would say generally yes. But what's interesting with the Gen Zs particularly, they want something unique, but then they also want it to be Instagrammable or taggable. So we're also seeing this kind of people actually going to exactly the same spot to get exactly the same picture, which is driving people to the same place, and people wanting something niche, not wanting to tag it. So I think this one is going to play out quite interestingly to see whether or not people want to be the first to find the place, or whether they want to go and capture that exact picture that's already been seen.
All right, and looking ahead, which destinations do you predict could break into the top 10 list by 2026?
Oh, this is a tough one because this is where AI is going to help find locations that we've probably not even heard of yet. So I'm also curious to watch and see, but I think there'll be some interesting ones coming in.
All right, sounds good. We've been in conversation with Laura Houldsworth, Managing Director for Asia Pacific at Booking.com, and we've been talking about their data, which reflects some key APAC traveler search trends from the January to August period this year. Laura, it's been a pleasure having you on this morning. Thank you.
Thanks very much for having me.
All right, you're welcome. Stay with Money FM 89.3.
Before acting on the information on Money FM, please consider if it's suitable for your own investment objectives, financial situation, and risk tolerance. To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.